Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. My name is Clifford. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing here at Binary Fountain, and I'm moderating today's webinar as well as answering a few questions. I'm excited to be on here with a panel of experts. I'd like to start off just by giving a brief overview of today's webinar. The purpose of the webinar is to address any questions our audience has regarding reputation and listings management. In order to answer your questions, we brought in 3 experts in digital marketing, reputation management, and SEO. So I'd like to welcome our experts. We have Reed Smith on, and he's going to introduce himself, John Musser, and we have Krystal Taing. So we'll show you our faces. I'm Clifford, the one talking, and we'll let the participants go ahead and introduce themselves. So we'll start with Reed. Reed?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Reed Smith. I'm the Vice President of Digital for Jarrard, Phillips, Cate, and Hancock, a strategic communications firm based in Nashville, Tennessee. We are solely focused on healthcare and even more specifically the provider side of healthcare. So my background is marketing in the hospital world and then ultimately digital marketing and consulting.
Great. Thank you, Reed. And John, we have John Musser. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm John. I'm the digital specialist for Sport Clips, where we specialize in men and boys haircuts. We have about 1,800 locations nationwide, and really kind of spearheaded the department 4 years ago. So it was a brand new department, and we're excited to be where we're at today.
Thank you, John. Thanks for being here. And like a good marketer, he has his logo, which is awesome that we can see. Good job on that. All right, Krystal Taing.
I'm Krystal Taing. I am the listings product specialist here at Rio SEO. So here to answer any questions as it relates to listings management, Google My Business, all of that stuff.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And I'm Clifford. I'm the Senior Vice President of Binary Fountain. We're a reputation management customer experience platform. I've been with Binary for about 2 years. Previous, I was at HCA Healthcare, where I led the digital marketing solutions, which included the reputation management, building that program out and implementing it, as well as our digital properties. So before we get into the questions, I want to remind everyone that it's an interactive webinar. So please ask questions in the box to the right where you can submit a question. We have questions that have been submitted already, but we'll take a combo of both. So if you have a question, please ask in that box and we'll field a few of those. And we're going to be, if we don't get to all the questions, because there have been a lot that have been submitted, we will follow up with those that have submitted either on the webinar or before we had the webinar today. We'll follow up with you on those questions. So without further ado, we're going to jump in, and we have some great questions and really excited about these. All right, so the first one up, we're going to go with Krystal. What is the most important aspect of SEO when it comes to ranking higher in Google?
Sorry, I was muted. I would say in reference to ranking higher on Google, assuming that this person is doing all of the basics, they've got all their NAP on their website and their listings. I think anything that's going to increase engagement, in particular, anything related to reviews. So make sure you're managing your reviews on Google, on Yelp if it's relevant for your industry, and then those first-party reviews on your site and getting those marked up on your local landing pages is going to be critical.
Good. All right, the next question. I'll take this one. How do I combat a negative reputation on Yelp? So this is a question that gets raised often. The best really approach to reputation on Yelp, and I know there's a lot of different feedback in terms of, negative reviews maybe showing more often than positive reviews, and there's a lot of myths and there's some just practical and what people have experienced. The best way I think to handle a negative reputation is just to respond to the reviews and try to get those offline. Address concerns for sure that are mentioned in the review, but always respond to reviews, whether that's on Yelp or on Google My Business. It's important to respond to reviews. It's really hard. Yelp is not for solicitation, so it's not that you can ask people to leave a review, even if it's negative or positive. Just even asking any of your customers to share their experience on Yelp. They don't like that approach. They prohibit it in their content guidelines. So really just respond to those reviews and, do the best to do service recovery. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on that, but that's been my experience on Yelp.
So not ignoring it, is that against?
Do not ignore it. Yeah.
No, I think
Right.
you're right. I think being visible and transparent and kind of honest and not robotic when it comes to responding to reviews, whether it's Yelp or otherwise, I think is really important. And I think being active there, I think we've seen historically a lot of people want to leave a review, but they don't really want to resolve anything. And so if they go there and they see that you're active, it may actually head off some of those that are just looking to, be negative for negative sake.
Great feedback. All right, the next one. What, if any, impact have you seen in your business as a result of responding to not just negative reviews, but the positive ones as well? From my perspective, we had, while I was at HCA, many times we were given the opportunity to do service recovery, and the reviewer would go back and update their review and let them know that, hey, they've reached out to me and they had a positive experience from there. And then also from a positive experience, it just builds goodwill. You're showing that you appreciate the feedback from your customers and you're an engaged business. So that helped out. Sometimes we'd have people reach out, oh, thank you, almost offline, send us a thank you for responding. You guys are kind, just some of that goodwill. There are some studies out there that have been done, and some of it's a little bit older. Mark Collier is on the website there. They did a study and it showed that, a third of reviews were then updated and or deleted after responding to a negative review. They went back and either updated it or they deleted the negative response. So that's why it's very important to engage, especially if you have the approach of we want to have service recovery. Any other examples or thoughts on service recovery from review responses?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly kind of what Reed just mentioned is I think users and consumers are going to be more engaging if they see you as a brand responding to all types of reviews, as opposed to those who just come to complain. I think them seeing a brand interacting and responding to reviews is going to encourage all types of feedback.
All right, good. This is a question we're going to give this to Krystal. What are the top 3 directories to use for contractor service area businesses? I have my own and I use regularly, but I want to see if there's something I've missed.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the most underutilized service area business site is likely going to be Manta for small businesses. There's also, you want to make sure you're on Thumbtack, Howls, all of those new kind of trendy sites for these types of contractors. And I know it's the opposite of free, but something that I think is growing in a lot of industries are the Google local service ads. Those are going to be a huge opportunity. They're expanding to more markets, to more industries. So if they're available for your industry, I would highly, highly suggest looking into those.
Great. Good suggestion. I've not heard of that suggestion in this context. That's good. This one we're going to give us to John. What's the best, this goes back to responding to reviews, but what's the best timing to respond to reviews? Same day, few days, 24-hour rule of thumb? Does promptly responding to reviews help you rank higher? What's been your experience, John?
Yeah, so we always kind of teach down to, we want to respond to all reviews that come in within 24 hours. There's a survey out there that 55% of respondents expect a business response within the day, and then it goes on with 30% expect within 3 days. But we really want to leverage within the 24-hour mark. Just if there's any negative reviews out there, but not just focusing on negative, but positive as well. So we always want to drive the kind of lower response time down than wait a few days.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of that, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but has to do with how you're staffed, certainly, right? I mean, from a resource standpoint, especially in healthcare or hospitals, Aaron, you mentioned earlier service recovery. So, I mean, if we see something and you can glean from that review that they're still in the facility, and being able to go and do that service recovery in person is probably much more meaningful and probably more likely that they're going to update the review if we can get to them while they're still there. It's not always possible, especially depending on how you're staffed or if it's the weekend or whatever it may be. So that's probably a great conversation to have internally. Certainly is, what's capable, like what can we do realistically? Because I think probably one of the worst things to do is set this expectation that, we're liking positive reviews, like in 15 minutes, like thumbs up, and we're liking the review, and then like the negative one we haven't responded to in like 4 days, like that's a bad precedent to set.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and adding on top of that, so if you can see, since we're a franchise business, you can see a client is not happy before they leave, with the service, that you nip the bud right there before they even leave to get online. Absolutely. So having that internal conversation with your team, at the franchise level will go a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, I've been asked how far back do I go to respond to reviews, and normally anything that's over a week. It depends on your business. It always depends, right? There's always some situations. I would not go back past a week or two with responding to reviews. If you haven't started up until today, just start from this point forward responding. I have a couple of questions that have come in through the chat. So we have, do you think consumers see any value in reviews that come through programs like Listen 360? This is the software that asks for reviews, versus organic like Google or Yelp. I'm not familiar with Listen 360, but I assume that's a first-party review. Most the studies that I've seen is that, and Bright Local puts out a great stat on this, around 88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as an in-person recommendation. So it definitely has an impact. Binary Fountain just did their own study, our own study, where we asked 1,000 individuals focused particularly on healthcare about the influence that online reviews have for in their decision of choosing a provider, and it is 75% that it definitely has an impact, and they are looking towards reviews. First-party reviews, Google likes those, and so we see an influence there. But anybody else have any other thoughts on first-party versus third-party, or something like the Listen 360?
Yeah, so we actually use Listen 360 to help with our NPS score. So it's right in our wheelhouse. It's survey-based, so it's not a first-party review where it's shown on Google or Facebook, Yelp, or anything like that. But it does let us know internally how we're doing at the location level. The way how we utilize Listen 360 on a website basis is that we have the ability to publish those surveys online to kind of go after keywords of what clients are saying in their surveys to help us index better when it comes to search. But yeah, Listen 360 for us is primarily NPS, but we always want to go after the Google, the first party reviews as much as possible.
Yeah, I would say any business that relies highly on service, particularly like restaurants, hotels, the Googles and the Yelps are going to be really critical. But operationally, if you truly want to use the reviews and the feedback to improve your brand and your business, I think the survey is a great opportunity.
Along the same line, we had a question that came in: how often and what time is best to send a transactional Net Promoter Score survey? Do you have any thoughts on this, Reed?
Early and often. No, I guess it somewhat depends on your business, right? Like where those intersections are. And I think that's where customer journey mapping kind of comes in to understand, logically, like, where are some insertion points that you would want to measure, in NPS. And so from a transactional standpoint, I know in healthcare at the point of discharge is obviously one of those that's historically kind of how that's been sent. But now we're starting to look at, well, wouldn't you want to know, after registration or, or different points in care. And so, I think this probably varies quite a bit. I don't know, John, what do you think from more of a retail standpoint? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so ours goes right after the service. So when a client gets a service and then they're it's a randomized survey. So however in the system gets pinged for them to, fill out a survey is what Listings 360 does for us. So yeah, for our customer journey, it happens right after the service.
Makes sense. You're muted.
The old mute button on conference calls. All right. I got another question here. As a medical company that has to worry about HIPAA and PHI, any recommendation about responding to reviews? It's really difficult to address concerns when you can't disclose any information. Reed, do you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, so I would say you don't try to address it. Now you do respond, but you don't try to address the concern necessarily because of PHI and HIPAA. And again, you've got to involve your legal counsel in this. You want to try to get that conversation offline, but you want to get it offline to somebody specific. So a specific person with a specific phone number. And in doing that, simply reaching out and acknowledging that they wrote a review and that you would like to talk to them, because obviously you can't resolve anything in a back and forth dialogue in a review setting anyway. And so trying to get this offline really helps in two ways. Number one, you don't get into a back and forth online, and number two, you can actually help them. And a lot of times we're seeing things in healthcare where it's not necessarily even the patient that's writing the review, right? It's the spouse or the granddaughter or whoever happened to be in the room. And so, there's not a lot you can do for those folks anyway. And chances are they're not going to call you and they're not trying to resolve anything. But if it's actually, in a lot of cases, like a billing concern or, something like, type of care, rude staff or that kind of thing, they'll call. And so, connecting those with people that would handle that anyway. So think about, like, if someone walked up to somebody in the hospital and had a complaint, well, who would they talk to? Is it the risk manager? Is it somebody in patient advocacy or whatever it is? That's how you kind of build that process. So you still respond. You have to be somewhat generic because of HIPAA, and then you try to get them to somebody that can help them offline.
Very good. The only thing I will add to that, agree completely with what Reed said, is there are times some complaints and issues that come through that aren't necessarily related to the health care that was provided to the patient or to a caregiver of that patient, but it might be something around portal or issue with the website or something ancillary with parking. It's okay to go into a little bit more detail on that because other people may have the same complaint and you're able to sort of hedge off additional comments about it if you give a complete answer. So that you have to work within the confines of the policies of your healthcare facility and company on what to respond. There are some responses that you can go a little bit more in depth, but never to where you're addressing the patient or getting anywhere near HIPAA or PHI. There's no recorded cases necessarily that I've seen so far of, violating HIPAA on review responses, but you don't want to be the first. You don't want to be the case study.
Yeah.
Good question, though. All right, the next one. I manage 400 plus Google My Business listings for providers in our medical practice. When they leave, is it better to mark them as permanently closed, or should I just remove listing? If I remove listing, will the provider be able to reopen a listing under the same name in their new location? Krystal.
So for this one, I think it depends, which I know is not a great answer, but I would say likely you want to remove the listing with a few caveats. Does the provider name also have the branded hospital name on it as well? Is it going to the hospital website? Those are elements you want to consider before purely removing it, because that kind of means you're still going to create a negative potential customer scenario if they are going to your website and then no longer see them there. So I would say if you can make a multi-step process by removing any branded, organizational information and then removing it, that way, should the provider go somewhere else or, want to claim the listings themselves, that would be there. But worst case scenario, if you can't remove the branded information, I think marking it permanently closed is completely fine.
All right, good. There's a couple more GMB questions that we're going to throw to Krystal, but Reed and John, feel free to jump in. I've heard if you manage more than 100 Google My Business listings, you will not receive alerts to your new reviews. Is that true? And if so, what can you do quickly to locate listings with newly posted reviews?
So yes, it's true. It's a limitation of Google My Business. Any account that has more than 100 locations, you don't get alerts, not just for reviews, but for anything, for Q&A and for any other elements. There are little tricks if you have around like 500 locations with manager access that will enable alerts, but anything over 500, you would have to use a tool. Otherwise, the only way to do is go through each of your locations, keep track of your reviews, and then somehow notice whenever another location comes. But at that point, I really think a reputation management tool is going to be your best bet. I think, Aaron, you're muted again.
Why? Why?
I can read the lips, but not that well.
Sorry, everybody. What is the most effective way to remove user-uploaded photos if, for example, they show the wrong location or violate HIPAA?
So the first thing you're going to want to do is flag it. That's always going to be the very first step. If you have multiple, people that can flag it as well, that's helpful. And then really just reaching out to Google support. If it's not naturally removed by their algorithm, someone has to manually review it. A manual review is going to be applied when you flag it, but if it's truly like obscene or a big issue, then I think reaching Google support or reaching your provider that can reach out to Google on your behalf is your next step.
Yeah, Reed, have you had any experience with that being in the health facilities?
It's very common,
Yeah.
right? And you end up with you don't even know what you're looking at half the time. It's like you hate to stare too hard, but yeah, I think, certainly flagging it or even having multiple people in the organization flag it all at once is helpful. And then certainly, if you're working with a provider on listing management, things like that, usually they have additional avenues. And so that's a great way to go.
There's some that's not review related, but we had many instances where individuals would check in or even on Instagram to a facility and they're taking a picture of their account number and MRN number on their wrist,
right.
The little bracelet that they got from the hospital. You can't control that. Patients, they're going to do what they want to do, but it's you got to be careful with that. Probably education on the other end on what to share, what not to share. Be careful. All right, next one. What is the best way to find and claim rogue, unauthorized Google My Business listings? Should you claim them or simply request that they be closed? Krystal.
So for this one, you have a couple avenues to actually find it. It's maybe you've done searches and you got additional ones. We have a report that goes out and basically scours Google and finds, potential rogue listings. And then it really just requires a human to go through and say, is this a duplicate? Is this something that should be merged? Should it be removed altogether or permanently closed? And then from there, in terms of claiming, I would only claim if it's something you want to keep. If it's something that's a duplicate or a rogue listing that needs to be removed, Google actually doesn't want your claim on it because they think for some reason there's an association and it shouldn't be removed, or they have to look deeper. So specifically duplicates, if you want it removed, do not claim it.
All right, good. Thank you. We have a question that came in. What is the best practice for zip codes? Since orthopedic doctors see physicians all over the U.S. News and World Report, I guess, or all over U.S. and the world, is it appropriate to put in zip codes from other states that we see patients, even though our organization only exists in Indiana? We don't want to get flagged by Google for having these zip codes.
So you would only want to put zip codes in as a service area if you as a business or professional are going to perform your business there. If patients are flying in to visit you, you only can use your zip codes that you operate out of. Outside of that, I mean, I would leverage your website to explain that, you know, obviously a lot of patients fly in or travel to visit you, but as far as Google My Business, the zip codes only work if you are servicing, you know, your potential patient in that area.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, this is very relevant for orthopedics, for oncology, and cardiology, very specific service lines as well. So great question. There was another question related to the same. Is there a best practice for adding posts to over 132 listings at one time? It's very time consuming. Just go in and add posts to Google listings one at a time. Is there an easier way to do it? Krystal?
No, unfortunately, not at this time. Hopefully, every time a new API update comes out, you know, we do it for quite a few brands. At this time, it's one by one if you're seen as a multi-location company. If you are an agency and you're just working with 132 different locations, as long as those individual locations are not labeled as chains by Google, then you could use the API. But right now, if you're a multi-location brand, you literally get an error back when you try to post via API. Unfortunately, I know they're not giving us any love.
Nope. And just adding, what we do is, I mean, we give complete managerial access on GMB, so the local teams can go ahead and post on, you know, whatever they want on Google, where it doesn't have to necessarily roll up to the corporate side of things. It's managed locally.
Good. That's good. That's yeah, a distributed model sometimes is helpful in that case and scenario. This one, John, I think you'd be best to answer this one. I'd love to hear someone speak to the balance between managing review responses for franchises at the corporate level and having franchisees involved with managing their own review responses. At what point does it become big corporate stepping in too far and lose some level of authentic response?
Yeah, so we actually kind of fall in line in a unique level. So anything that's coming from the local side of reviews is actually managed by our local franchisees and their team. Any reviews that kind of happen with us corporately, because we do have a few company-owned stores that get handled internally with our own teams. And so we really kind of push everything down locally to the local teams. We use, you know, the platforms like Rio to help with managing the conversation and the authentic voice behind it. So, you know, a particular function with using templated responses, it just kind of shows examples of what to use when it comes to responses. But then they also have the ability to add in their own voice and make any updates in that kind of way. So yeah, we're very unique, as any local responses or franchise don't have to be coming from the franchise level, and it can't be necessarily coming from the corporate side of things, is that we aren't able to respond on their behalf.
And I think what, you know, Sport Clips in particular has done really well, and any organization need to do in order to be successful, is really invest in training on the importance of responding to reviews, like what type of language to use. I think what we run into oftentimes is that these franchise, you know, managers and owners, this is their livelihood. They're running the operations, they're doing the paperwork. So we're responding to reviews like maybe they're going to take it too personally. I think before you give them the reins, make sure you've invested in training and given them guidelines so that they feel like they're supported by corporate, but it is coming from their voice.
That's it. Exactly it.
Yeah, and there's you know, in my experience when evaluating a number of different clinics and, you know, how they were managing their reviews prior to us having a corporate program, it was all over the map. Either no one responded or they were responding inappropriately. We had times just some really rogue stuff that was happening. And so corporate had to come in and go, here are the guidelines. We weren't overseeing and overlords and making, but we definitely wanted that local response. But, you know, just in doing an audit, if you are a franchise that has franchisees and you've not done an audit, there might be some good guidelines and policies to put in place and make sure that you're measuring those and communicating them, because there's some things that could be costing your franchisees some business, and they just may be ignorant to it. and how it might be impacting their reputation and their brand at a local level. All right. We have a question. This probably will go to Krystal. But anybody jump in. Are there ways to have a new fresh start regarding GMB reviews? A client has over 184 bad reviews, 1 to 3 stars, and on average a ranking of 1.8. They haven't been aware of this bad reputation in the past, but are now under another management and want to do better. They have a much better product and customer service now, and they'd like to start again. What is their option to start over again with GMB?
So within guidelines, if they've changed management and rebranded, they could technically create a new listing if they want to close it down. However, just because you have a bad reputation, creating a new listing, you're still going to have an uphill battle in regards to ranking with your other listings, still ranking despite the bad reputation. I would say your time is probably better spent just asking every single customer that comes in to leave a review, ask them how their service was, really training your staff and making this a priority, saying, you know, this is important to us. I know you guys have all worked hard. We want to guide you and be successful here. This is kind of what we need to do. I would say that's likely going to be your best path forward as opposed to starting over.
Yeah, and Google.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, John.
I mean, kind of a technique that we use is because this will happen from time to time is we get franchisees that leave the network and new ones come in and take over an existing store. And it's really kind of going after those clients, you know, your best loyal clients that come in, leave us a review, sending emails for surveys to invite them to leave a review on Google or Facebook. Just kind of spreading the word, kind of really, changing things around because it has to be done organically and authentically, and we can't force them to leave the reviews. And, so it's a timing thing, being patient with it. And then, over a period of time, it's going to start to turn around. Because I know when clients look at recent reviews, they don't go back more than 2 weeks. And so, the more relevant the reviews are coming in, the better the service is going to be. And then over time, you're just going to have a better, rating and ranking within Google.
Yeah, I've likely seen that a few times where you see the reviews shift pretty dramatically on a business and you can tell that there has been some change. And oftentimes, even if you ask for reviews, say, how do you like our new management? Give us some feedback on Google about our new management. And then that trains users to start leaving reviews about new management, which then tells potential consumers, hey, let's give this business a try. Even if we, went there before, we're not happy, let's try it again because there's some pretty positive feedback about the new management.
Good, and completely concur with those answers. And to your point, John, regarding recency reviews, there are studies that show that the more recent reviews are more impactful than older ones. So there is that turnaround situation. So encouraging, and Google has zero qualms about you reaching out and asking customers to share their experience online. They don't like you gating reviews, so don't gate reviews at all. But in terms of just, sending the positive folks who have good experience to the Google My Business, ask everybody. Chances are, if you're doing a good job, you're going to get really good reviews.
Yeah, and actually in relation to Google wanting you to solicit reviews, they actually started, and this is available for small businesses, they auto-populate Google posts that highlight your positive reviews. They create a graphic, but if for some reason you don't like it, you can go create a very similar graphic, just highlighting some of your positive reviews. Despite your maybe average review rating being 1 or 2 stars, highlight some of your new recent reviews and even say, hey, we have new management, check out some of our recent reviews or see what this person has to say. That's another way to kind of combat, your history.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Google also uses small talk. I think that. Yeah. Sorry, I was getting a call. You can review reviews that or they use small talk, so you can take existing reviews and post them on social media, and you can go in Google Posts as well, as sometimes it may not auto-populate within your GMB listing that, hey, there's a review left here, post it using Google Posts, but using that small talk website where Google populates your reviews is also a pretty handy tool that we use.
Yeah, they actually just changed the URL to marketingkit.google.com for whatever reason, and it didn't redirect at the beginning. So in case anyone wants to use it, it's like marketingkit@google.com.
And in case you ever feel bad about not implementing a redirect correctly, even Google doesn't get it right.
There you go.
Your digital team, don't feel too bad. You're in good company. So Reed, there's a question that came in about healthcare marketing. What do you think should be top of mind as an opportunity in healthcare marketing today? And it could be in the context of the reviews and listings, but location-based, local-based, but what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So, in most cases, we're competing in a local or regional market. There's very few, especially hospitals out there, that are getting this more destination medicine where people are flying from all over the country or world. So in most cases, you're competing locally. And, when we start talking about, and everybody's hearing about the digital front door a lot now, people are looking online for those resources. And where they used to be looking for a physician, then it was a physician near me, now it's a physician near me with 5 stars or whatever it is. And so I think reviews and listing management are some of the primary ways that we could impact the patient experience as they come in contact with our organizations. And so I would make sure that the information online is correct, that you own those listings and can kind of control them or monitor them and that kind of thing, that you do take this seriously, that you have somebody that at least is partially dedicated to keeping up and making sure this stuff is correct, and that in a timely fashion we're responding to people online and all of those types of things. And so that goes outside of just reviews. Obviously, there's people asking questions through private messages on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it may be. But it's that community management piece and kind of working within your local community to be a resource.
Thank you. Great. This is going to circle back to John. This is a franchise question. Should local managers have access to their listings?
Our strategies for sport clubs is yes. Local managers are going to probably be your most trusted team members at the local level. They got access, keys to the store, they got access to the register. Giving them access on a digital front is the next logical step. It does help with keeping kind of, our strategies in place with responding or posting on social channels. It may be that our local franchisee may not have time, and so it's just kind of delegating, within their team that someone's going to have to do it. And the best resource to have is probably your local managers as well.
Krystal, what have you seen in the companies you worked with?
So I know that most corporate, when it's not franchise-based, that they don't typically want managers having access because there's likely corporate guidelines when they respond to reviews or updating data. But Google did just roll out the ability for anyone at the store to be added as a site manager without corporates basically say so. They can go in and remove them, but right now you don't have to require corporate to add you to get access to the listing. So I feel like it's likely a shift both from Google's standpoint, but also corporate. And a lot of it, I do think, has to do with reviews and images and some of the rich content that, quite honestly, if you're at corporate and you've got a couple thousand locations, that you may not be paying attention to this small store in this small town, but the manager still wants to be able to provide some of that information.
Yeah, and it's really having a structure in place as well at the corporate level and teaching down. It's just going to keep us well organized, and things don't really get dropped down to the nitty gritty, but it's just that organizational level, because we do want to have our corporate branding, and we want to make sure that we make sure that we have the guidelines that we're coming from corporate, but still have the authentic voice. And that's, our main priority is we don't want to feel like a robot, don't sound like a robot, that it is the local community, and those that are in the local community should have access to those, to those assets there.
Good. There's a question. I haven't found that when I add a suite number behind an address in GMB listing, it screws up the map. Is there a way around that?
I don't know why I hate suite numbers when it comes to submitting data to Google. I typically just remove them if there's an error. It really doesn't, like, if you think about it, when you're submitting your data to a maps platform, specifically the address, it's trying to place a map pin, and the suite number just doesn't mean anything. So I would typically like add it if you have complaints about users not being able to find you in a large shopping center. Otherwise, I think the suite number on Google is irrelevant, especially if you have signage and it's pretty clear to find you.
Is everybody on Reed and John, is that your experience too, working with suite numbers? They just screw up everything.
Yeah, you know, we gotta move the pin around. It is what it is.
Healthcare is very relevant. Healthcare, we're always getting, oh my goodness, well, there's so much confusion there. So there's some even improvements that Google can make potentially around that. But,
yeah, I agree.
I heard Krystal say, I hate suite numbers. All right, what are some strategies brands can use to encourage their customers to share their positive experiences online? Do Yelp and Google allow you to ask for reviews? Reed, do you want to take this? I know we covered it a little bit. But.
Yeah, we covered a little bit, and I'd love to hear some other folks kind of weigh in, because I'm coming from kind of a biased perspective of healthcare, where we're usually not the first to run out and die on the hill with new ideas. And so I'd love to hear what other people are doing. But with that said, yes, I mean, you can ask for reviews. You know, Aaron, I think you mentioned it earlier, Yelp doesn't love that. And so the idea of having like tablets, like sitting around in the rooms and stuff like that is probably not the best idea, especially from a Yelp standpoint, IP addresses and whatnot. But I think, you know, having a way that we're reaching out, because I think in healthcare specifically with the CAP survey or HCAPS, it's such a long span between your experience and getting this formalized survey that it serves a couple of purposes. Number one, it gives you more real-time feedback. And certainly, you know, you would think with the more that you're doing and the more you're asking, you're going to get more positive reviews by just simply asking, because why else would you review a hospital? You know, so unless the experience was bad, right? I mean, that's the time you're going to do it. And so I think it's becoming necessary to this point of simply asking. So some of that is, are you capturing email addresses up front at the point of registration, or do you have a way to actually deliver that ask, I guess?
Yeah, and I would just jump in, agree with what you said. There are some, you know, it's always important to understand the content guidelines of each platform. So I understand what Yelp prohibits, what they allow. Google, Facebook, and others, Vitals, Health Grades in the healthcare setting. But Reed touched on something with regards to the registration and capturing and getting consent to communicate with the patients. It's important to have that, because then that allows you to do further email marketing and also potentially even texting the customers, asking them, or patients, and asking them to leave a review or share their experience. So very important. Some of the operational, you know, sometimes we just think of these things as a marketing initiative, but it actually impacts operations, and you have to make sure that you're dotting all your I's, crossing all your T's as it relates to obtaining that data and getting consent from the patient and working with your colleagues in the other service lines of your either facility or within your practice. So very important. Good question. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to add in what kind of practices that we do is we have vanity redirects that go specifically to the store's, you know, Google listing or Facebook page, right where they're going to leave a review. Because what happens is you tell a client, hey, would you mind leaving us a review? They'd have to go to Google, spell out, you know, your name, and then be found in Google. How we limit that and make it really easy is that, hey, if you just go to this website, it takes you directly to the Google review site, and clients can just go in there and leave the review real quick. So we've done, like, you know, tips and tricks, like you can leave that vanity URL on the back of a business card, handing out to clients, you know, if they're walking on the way out, leaving us a review, or even capturing clients as they're first coming in and sitting down, and, you know, they may be waiting to get a haircut, that's saying, hey, do you mind leaving us a review, knowing that that client is already, you know, a regular, and so, yeah, you know, while I'm waiting, you know, 5 to 10 minutes before a haircut, just go ahead and leave the review. They know exactly the URL to go to, and that way it kind of just, you don't have to fumble around searching for it. You know, Yelp is the different animal where you can't, you know, you can't go after any of that stuff. And, you know, it's having find us on Yelp branded stickers around, or just letting kind of clients know, hey, you know, we are found on Yelp, you know, find us on Yelp kind of thing. You can't really go further than that, but
Right.
that's how you know, we're trying to find success that way, is being really more authentic. But with Google and Facebook, we can have those direct links. With Yelp, we kind of have to kind of go at a different approach.
Yeah, I would say with Yelp, what I've seen is, I mean, you can ask customers to post their picture of their haircut to Yelp, and that can kind of encourage them to leave. You can just like send an email or a text and say like, thank you for your service, and then just include the links to Yelp and Google and all the properties below. I think customers really appreciate when you give them the option where they want to leave a review. That's been successful. But yeah, Yelp just doesn't want, they feel that it's not authentic when you are leading with asking for feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Great answers. Great. Thank you all. We were at that 45-minute mark, and cannot thank Reed, John, Krystal enough for your participation and answering the questions. I learned a lot myself, which is always good. I'm always learning something new. And we hope that for the audience and the participants that you had your questions addressed. If we didn't get to them, because there was a number that we didn't get to, we will respond by email. And if there were any other questions that you guys had during the webinar, feel free to send those in. We'd be happy to answer those as well. So thank you to our experts, and thank you to all of you that participated. This webinar will be available. The recording will be. So check back to Rio SEO and Binary Fountain, RioSEO.com, BinaryFountain.com, and this might even make an appearance on Touchpoint, Reed. Yes. So there's a lots of places where to access this. But thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.